Okay, hi everyone. I'm Sarah Giannetti. I am a Ohio Food Policy Network Steering Committee member. I will be facilitating our networking session this afternoon. And first, I wanted to kick it off, glancing at the slide I have here with our discussion points. We can certainly deviate from these if that's what everyone prefers, or have questions that they're burning or coming towards the front of their mind. But first, I just wanted to leave some space to see if there were any additional questions or thoughts from the morning session if you attended the Prioritizing Equity in Local Food Policy. So we heard from Haley at Public Health State in Montgomery County and Kip from the Kerwin Institute in their work around equity and local food councils. I have a comment or question. It doesn't exactly relate to the presentation, but something that I came across twice last week during two different webinars was the term food apartheid used instead of food deserts. And I was trying to pull up my notes on that, but I might lose the slides. I don't want to do that. But basically, implying that if we say food deserts, that is just by circumstance, and rather than saying food apartheid, it is acknowledging policies and systems that would have played a role in, access to food not being present in certain areas. I'm curious if anyone on this call has heard the term food apartheid, or if that's starting to be used in your work as it relates to local food councils and equity. It's new to me, but I heard it 2 days in a row last week, and didn't know if that resonates with anybody, or if we wanted to discuss that for a little bit as it relates to the equity presentations from this morning.
Hi, Sarah, it's Haley. I can jump in a little bit. I apologize if there's some background noise today. Yeah, so I think one of the articles you probably saw was on WISO, which is a reporter that's based in Dayton. And so some of the comments were for some of our partners with some grassroots efforts in Dayton that talked about food apartheid. And it's something that we've been having a lot of conversations about. One of the frustrating things is when you talk about data from the USDA, it's still food desert. And so I feel like both terms, food deserts are a part of our data and our story, but food apartheid may be more of the term when we're really talking about racial equity and really, why do these food deserts exist? Redlining plays a role, disinvestment plays a role. And I think food apartheid helps make, talk about that. And I think, it brings us back to these food deserts aren't here for a reason. There is food there. It's just not healthy, local, affordable food. So I'm happy to put a link to the article in case anyone hasn't seen it.
Thanks, Haley. I have not seen that actual article. These were on some different national webinars that just came across my desk last week. Any other follow-up comments to that, or questions maybe from Haley's presentation, or any other comments related to equity work as it relates to local food policy? Thanks for the link, Haley. And I see there's a comment in the chat from Lisa, interning at Union County Health Department, and they're starting a new food council in Union County. Their first meeting is next Monday. That's super exciting. So if anybody has tips for Lisa, or just wants to give her some words of encouragement, please do so.
Lisa, I think it's worth mentioning that the OFPN website does have a resources tab with lots of good things uploaded there that might be helpful to you. And then also the website has a map of all the food councils in Ohio. So once Union County's food council is up and running, you can feel free to connect with me. I can get you guys listed on the website.
Any other thoughts or questions from this morning's session?
Sorry, I joined a little late, Sarah and Amanda, but I was curious if in hearing from Haley and the excellent work that they're doing with the Equity Coalition, I was curious if folks have collaborated with other coalitions and organizations. Have Food Council priorities aligned with any other organization? I know Haley mentioned like the Substance Use Prevention Task Force. Forgive me, I forget the name of it, but I was just curious, like in terms of equity, you know, if other folks have done anything like that. Or also, go ahead, yeah.
Sorry, Cream. I was going to say, if you want me to provide a little context on that, what we spoke about this morning, in case anyone wasn't there, in Montgomery County, our Food Equity Coalition has a very similar structure and framework to our Community Overdose Action Team and our Infant Vitality Task Force. And something we did before the pandemic that I really hope we get back to is the project managers for those would meet regularly and talk about kind of what we're working on and come up with ideas of how we can collaborate. Like, oh, that sounds really good. You know, our coalition could help with this. You know, we're working in that area. And we've done still a few projects, even during the pandemic, where you know, we're all trying to reach the same folks sometimes. And so that are, dealing with multiple issues. You can be, having substance abuse disorder at the same time as you're hungry, or, your family can be disproportionately impacted by infant vitality and be hungry. So why aren't we working together on programs? So we've done some good work with, we partnered with the Community Overdose Action Team on our Victory Seed Garden project, which is where we provided the seed packets from Ohio State University Extension to some of our group homes through mental health. And so that's been an addiction. That was a really cool project where we got to really realize how many community and neighborhood gardens there were around these homes. It made some new connections that I don't think we would have gotten naturally in the Food Equity Coalition. And then with the Infant Vitality Task Force, with all the great work Produce Perks is doing around their prescription vouchers for pregnant and new moms, we've been able to kind of help partner with them to help get that program extended in Montgomery County when there's been gaps in funding, but then also help partner with more local stores and try free delivery to moms. We know how difficult it is for moms to even get to the grocery store when you've got a bunch of little ones that you got to haul with you. So just trying some new and innovative ways to kind of expand on existing initiatives.
I love you. I love you. Sorry. I love that, Haley. Like, thank you for sharing.
No problem.
I love you too. Like, why not? But I think we've struggled a little bit with really expanding, in at least in the Franklin County Local Food Council, our membership, and really engaging groups that are doing work in alignment or tangential to what we're doing. And like you said, there's, intersections between food insecurity, housing insecurity, and mortality. And so, yeah, I'm excited to hear more about what you're doing there. But yeah, thanks.
Okay, I think we can move on to the second question. It's pretty broad, but what issues are you currently facing with your local food council work?
So I can go ahead and jump in. This is Julie. I'm in Ashtabula County and work with Ashtabula Local Food Council. And we really haven't been meeting. COVID did kind of hit some of our members pretty hard. We have at least half who are caring for elderly parents. So we really haven't been getting together frequently. But when we have, there was a degree of contention in some of the conversations. And I don't know per se where it started, but it seems like we all have the same general idea, but our approach to get there seems to be different. So I was jumping in today because I was curious to see how other people navigated through some of those things. And also, yeah, I guess that's largely it. I'd say some of the there's some pushback from some folks it started as a decentralized grassroots committee. There was no interest in organizing into anything further. I'm of the camp that I feel the need to organize into more of a structure, either a nonprofit or some sort of entity in order to do broader work and form kind of a coalition. I work for Ohio State, so I was interested in building kind of coalitions of groups, and it was helpful to me if the Food Council was organized into some more formal entity. So anyway, that's kind of what we've been struggling with. I don't know how to get past that. There's sort of a barrier. There's some pushback on Ohio State for not, I guess just being a big university, and folks find that it's maybe not as, they don't see them as an ally per se. So we've had some of those conversations, and we do have a lot of active members who are working on their own projects, but bringing that group together and having that conversation is kind of what we're struggling with. So I'm just curious to see if anybody else has had either similar experiences or working through that. So.
Thank you for sharing, Julie. Anybody have similar challenges or maybe a solution to share?
That's okay.
I definitely agree that
I was
COVID
just
definitely has made us all change our processes and procedures and rethink how we're operating, and definitely don't have that all figured out.
Trying really hard not to be the only one that talks. So but I'm happy to help Julie with some suggestions. One of the things, that I think is important that in Montgomery County we started from is there was a lot of great work going on, but the coordination just needed to happen. It was just, there was duplication of efforts and still is, but how do we try to, manage that and get folks to work together and communicate? It was also just hard for us all to say, what are those solutions? We should be agreeing upon at least like some type of framework to push us in a new direction. We can, keep pumping out community health assessments in every county in Ohio year after year, but the data isn't changing. So that's really what we used is we have to do something different because the data is not moving. There has to be something we can try. We also felt really strongly that there needed to be a backbone organization because sometimes, there has to be ownership from one person or one entity just to keep the day-to-day stuff going sometimes. So either that's like an identified group or an identified organization. I just think that backbone support is beneficial. And so that may be some talking points you can use.
Thank you. That's helpful.
Yeah, and I was just going to share some woes with having an OSU connection and being on a food council, and that's that sort of what Haley was referring to, the backbone organization bit, maybe just sometimes stepping aside and not wearing that hat. I know it's like your local food systems coordinator, Julie, because we've met and we chatted, but if there's another entity in the county that may be better suited to champion the work, kind of takes out that power and authority that sometimes we might bring unconsciously to the space. So yeah, a lot of folks, at least in Franklin County, who have OSU affiliations, we often just like take off our hat sometimes and just join as citizens, even though we do pull from resources at the university. But it allows us to just, again, check our power at the door sometimes that we inadvertently tend to bring to a space because of just presence, but I think it makes for better work and helps bring everyone to an even playing field. But that's like a strategy I've taken with it. But yeah.
Hi, this is Tammy in Knox County, and I would just like to share that we kind of have a similar situation in that we talked about becoming a 501(c), and I would say maybe half of the group was interested in moving forward, and the other was not. So I'm just wondering, is it necessary to become a 501(c)? I mean, what is your recommendation for that? And yeah, I was just wondering if most of the food councils that are on the line maybe have the 501(c), and how many do not.
Hi, this is Bryn from Licking County. So we do not, but we could easily, now that this is a lot of our early work with Licking County Food Council, kind of led to all the members going out and doing some really great, amazing things in their own professional lives. And so, in that was the starting of the Canal Market District. So I know, they have kind of acted as our, fiscal sponsor in the past. However, one of the things we're kind of at right now is we have kind of been hibernating for a few years, but we still have this bank account at Park National Bank that, like our little, kitchen table board had started, and it still has like $2,000 in it. And we don't do anything with it. It sits there. It's under our personal names, but at some point we need to bring it under a fiscal sponsorship or something. But for us, when we started it, it was just our kitchen table, our little kitchen table board, and we were able to collect money and the goodwill of a lot of organizations and family foundations who just supported us and weren't really harping on us on needing that. But now, we kind of would like to have something.
So I guess I would ask from the folks that are collecting the data on the food councils, is there a place where that information is logged? Like, I know the webpage has who's involved, but do you know how many are organized into an entity or how many are just groups?
This is
Yeah,
at
I
the
don't
state
know if
level
we have
or
that.
collectively in Ohio?
I'm sorry, what's that?
I was confirming you were asking about how many in Ohio, which I know we do have on the OFPN website, just in terms of number of councils, at least who've reported to the steering committee. And yeah, Amanda, we don't have whether they're, a formal nonprofit or otherwise. But that's a good question.
Yeah, it's been something that Franklin County's kind of gone back and forth on for many years, but similar to Bryn's sentiment, like having a fiscal agent to manage funds has seemed to work better. And we are all volunteer, nobody's paid. So there was just no reason to go through the trouble of having to form one and keep it up. So yeah, we decided to opt out of that.
I have a follow-up question to that, since I am not part of any local food councils. Does that, whether being formally organized or not, prohibit writing for grant funds, or does a certain organization take the lead and then administer that grant on behalf of the council? And what are some pros and cons in terms of obtaining funding?
Yeah, that was our issue. That was, I guess, part of why I was pushing for the organization, is because some grants are only able to be pulled down by a nonprofit. Of course, some can be done by an educational institution. So just depending on the nature of the grant and the project, it seemed, there's sometimes it's more appropriate for a nonprofit to do the work, and then sometimes for the university. So yeah, it does impact our ability to, and even take in funds as a, do fundraisers and then house the funds somewhere, unless it's in somebody's personal account. So that was the other that was the other issue.
Yeah, we had enough partners who were willing to be that fiscal agent for us, one being Local Matters, who we heard from earlier today, Michelle Moskowitz Brown, who's a director of it, and also the health department. And so, yeah, it just kind of went back to they would be our partners in writing for those grants anyway. So they had no problem holding money if we had it.
So far in Knox County, we've just applied for one grant, and OSU Extension did take the lead on it. But we haven't tried for any other grants. I did have another question too. How many of you have growers on your councils? Because that's in the very, very beginning, a long time ago, when the council was first started, we did have growers, and it was actually that's pretty much all that was on the council. Now, right now, we just have local organizations. We don't have the growers represented.
Tammy, we do have one beef farmer on our council. We've had interest from other growers, and they've kind of come and gone. I think, maybe they check out a meeting and determine if it's worth coming back to, but I think they're always constrained by time. So that's the struggle we've had here.
This is Bryn, Licking County. Our food policy council is actually mostly farmers. It started from producers, and I'm a producer, and it kind of grew out of that. We have a couple academics from Denison, but they're not doing it in their academic capacity. They're just kind of doing it. And then a lot of stakeholders of like markets, and then a few institutional and chefs and stuff. But yeah, we're kind of, I know we're one of the rare ones in that the majority of ours is actually a grower food council.
Bryn, I think this was shared maybe 2 or 3 summits ago, but there was some network mapping done. And that was one of the main points, is that very few, if any, councils had producers sitting on them. So I think you might have been the one that was highlighted, and everyone wanted to know, how you had been able to get farmers to sit on the council, but that is pretty common.
It is. And I think it kind of depends too on, how they're started. If they're started, from like a top down, like a governmental or an academic side, or if it is like starting in a more grassroots way, I think, through growers. Like in Licking County, it was started in a lot of way of like, we had one market, and in our market, we did not have SNAP access, like we didn't have any markets in Licking County accepting SNAP and all this stuff. So for us, it came out of almost looking at what like other counties were able to do, and why couldn't we? And so for us, it was definitely like a grassroots thing of growers wanting to get involved a little bit more. I think it's really important. I think one of the missing elements also usually that I always see is and we struggle too, is having buyers. Like we don't have a lot of like we have a few institutional buyers that like come along, but we always talk, oh, we want grocers and we want restaurants and stuff, but we don't have them at the table. And we can't fix these problems if we can't also hear some of their concerns and needs. So we've always talked about that's what we're missing in ours.
Yeah, and we've struggled a bit with the seasonality of it. Obviously, growers are busy during the growing season. And so depending on what your engagement looks like having events, back when we were doing things in person, we had to really be cognizant about, okay, what topics or types of meetings would growers be interested in? And we should hold those in the winter because those are typically their off months and they'll be able to engage. Whereas, maybe in the summer we go to them with like urban farm tours or something. So just making sure to be as accessible as possible and meeting people where they are hasn't always been, something we're constantly working on. But yeah, that's kind of where we're at. I was curious how folks are engaging BIPOC communities. That's something, as Kip presented on in a previous breakout session, our equity assessment. And, I know that Haley, you talked a great deal about Montgomery County's approach, and it's something, we're looking at as well with the Food Equity Coalition. But just curious if other folks, that's been part of your agenda and how you've gone about doing that, whether it's like having outreach committees or just, meeting folks again where they are, going to their tables and meetings, or just curious how folks have engaged in trying to both recruit and work with BIPOC communities. And I guess if you don't have experience, maybe some intention or like what you may have been inspired by recently that would maybe add to your policy agenda, if you will.
Well, I'll speak for Ashtabula County. I mean, we do have a very small BIPOC population. So, I mean, it just numbers wise, percentage wise, it is this, probably less than 7 or 6%. So I acknowledge that as an issue that we have. We have 2 farmers of color in the county that I know of, and we have made efforts to engage them at different times and for different reasons. They didn't get involved or are no longer involved just because they retired from farming and aren't active anymore. But one idea I had was there's a movie called Gather, and it's kind of about indigenous food pathways. Apparently, I have not watched it. I'm sorry. But my idea was maybe to do some watch the movie, and then do some programming around that movie, and then I don't know, have a conversation from there. And then the other idea was to do a farm to table dinner around the idea of build a bigger table about immigration and kind of immigrants' contribution to agriculture. So, I mean, those are programming ideas that haven't happened that could happen, but we'll see. But being in a more rural county, I'd say we don't have a huge BIPOC community. So, but I am involved in a community garden that's very diverse. So.
Yeah, and I'll add that even at our OFPN steering committee level, we're struggling in this area in both to recruit or retain members that are producers or BIPOC. So for those of you on the phone or on the line, if we have, I think Michelle said 4 seats open, and I don't know if Amanda, if you have the link for the application, but those are open through the end of the month. We're looking for new members.
I'll paste that into the chat.
Thanks. We can definitely come back to issues if they come up. I want to keep us moving along to make sure we cover our topic areas. So next question is, are you aligning in any way with the OFPN policy agenda? And I know that was in the chat earlier, and I can repaste that as well, or I can share that on my screen if that's easier for everyone. This policy agenda launched this past summer. So we're certainly looking for groups to align and also provide feedback on what's a priority in your area, what might not be, what should we focus on as a group and as a network.
And for context, if you were attending last year's virtual summit, there was an interactive session where network members could identify policy concerns that they had. And so that information was used to craft the agenda. So this is a policy agenda that was built by the network members.
So for local farms, there are 3 areas. So incentivizing and facilitating the transfer of farmland to next generation farmers with a focus on BIPOC, young and beginning farmers. Second is revise and clarify the Ohio Building Code to provide clear guidance and allow for high tunnel and hoop house construction in all jurisdictions. And third is incentivize regenerative, sustainable farming practices that preserve and improve soil health, which, you know, a lot of this we've heard about today. So are any local councils working on any of these initiatives? And either Amanda or Karima, are you still seeing the slide or are you seeing the?
Yeah, I was gonna let you know, we still see
web.
the PowerPoint slide. So I think when you select screen share, you have to change the window.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. New share. How's that? No.
Yes, that's better.
Oh, okay. Good. So then the second one is access and education, second bucket, if you will. So this is around nutrition incentive programming, expanding SNAP to online access, both for small retailers, local farms, farmers markets, and home delivery. Addressing, you know, the physical infrastructure and shortcomings to ensure online sales, and then establishing a statewide nutrition and food systems education pilot program and nutrition standards for pre-K to 12. Does anyone have experience working in these areas? So nutrition incentive programming would be produce perks, anything with online sales, or I know the nutrition standards is more of a state legislation issue.
In Montgomery County, we've worked pretty closely with produce perks in these areas. Firstly, we started with using some of our COVID funding from Ohio Department of Health to do a pilot for food delivery from local grocers. So not from like a Kroger or a Meijer or Aldi, but like we have a Dots Market. And so that was a way to help residents that might be sick and can't leave their home to get groceries from a local. And then the nice thing was Produce Perks was available there too. So that helped some of our, Ohio Equity Institute pregnant and postpartum women as well, kind of expand their dollars and get it delivered. And then we also have provided some funding and continue kind of looking at how we can use the American Rescue Plan funding in our community to help continue that with Dots Market, but then also our recent co-op grocery store, Gem City Market, that opened. We're helping support. They got their Produce Perks up and running, but we're also talking with them about getting that up and running online so they can accept SNAP and EBT online. And then hopefully they're a pretty new grocery, but we've had some initial discussions about delivery there too, and helping with some initial funding to help figure out what delivery will look like for that grocery. And Produce Perks is intertwined in all those conversations too.
Thanks, Haley.
Haley, I think that sounds like an awesome idea that you did with the COVID funding. That's just kind of brilliant. And I wish we had thought of that here around the same time. We have done some work on food SNAP and produce perks through the community garden. Largely, we got a SNAP terminal there, so folks from the neighborhood can come down to the garden and purchase food using their SNAP card. And then we're trying to expand into produce perks, but that has stalled a bit. But one thing I saw in there that I was curious about is this food systems education pilot program. And I'm just curious if anyone who is working on that, because that is something that I've kind of targeted kind of like as my next effort, I guess, is to get more into the schools and develop some food systems programming for both children and then, like K-5 and then also high school. So if there is a group out there working on that, I'd be interested in participating.
Yeah, I don't know who in OFPN is working on it. Okay, Amanda, were you just going to say something?
I was going to say, I know Carol is on the call.
Yes.
And so I didn't know if Carol maybe knew, when this policy priority was identified, if it was related to some of the farm to school initiatives or the different groups. I know there's quite a few coalitions or groups related to farm to school. And I didn't know if this maybe kind of was leaning into some of that work. I don't know, Carol, if you can speak to that or not.
Which
I
one
know
are
you're
you?
also, farm to school is also under institutions, so I think it's kind of confusing, but.
Carol, the highlighted one.
Yeah, it's, I'm squinting. Establish a statewide nutrition system education program. Nutrition standards, pre-K-12. So those are two separate things, right? Establishing a food system pilot program. And then I know Noreen Warnock has been very passionate about getting health and nutrition education standards in place in Ohio.
So Noreen would be the best person on the steering committee?
She's very knowledgeable on that one. Yeah. I think we're the only state without them, without those standards specific to health education.
Yeah, you're right. Mm-hmm.
I know I struggle. I mean, it's rural. We're pretty rural over in Union County, but I struggle with getting into the schools in any sense of the word. They just don't want to do the fresh produce. They, the stuff that they get is in bags and they cut them open, they heat them up, and they don't even have full-time food service workers that prep anything. They just, I don't want to say just, they're doing what they can with what they have. But
right.
I know that we have so many farmers around here, so much produce, that it would be such an awesome program. I guess I just need to work harder to get that person. I'm going to find that person. There's got to be somebody in there that I just need to find that one. So once I find the one and then it works, then I can roll it to everyone else. You always just have to find that one. Still looking. So yeah. I'm open to tips and tricks if you have any.
Well, the good news is that the Ohio Department of Education is about to start rolling out some farm to school campaigns. They're going to be working on disseminating the Feed Our Future model that's being used up in Cleveland. They're doing a monthly newsletter now. They're putting, more and more encouragements and incentives in place. So hopefully just sort of that momentum will help crack that door open.
I just need like a hair, like just.
I know.
Give me a hair and I'll get in there. I just have to, that one. I just need that turning, that little bit of a turning point.
Carol, I had a question about farm to school this year. With the expansion of free and reduced lunches to all K-12, in I'm in Granville, and Granville School District has a less than 2% free and reduced lunch. In a usual year where, it's a very privileged school district. But even it was expanded into our school district. And so, Granville had one of the better more expansive farm to school programs, but because of the free and reduced lunch, it changed the way that their funding was happening. And so, and you know how like that all works through like the DOD and all that, da, da, da. And so has that affected like these programs this year? Because I've been talking to our chef and he is saying, because everybody's doing the free and reduced, they're doing it 100%. It's changed their financial modeling and where they're getting their funds. And so I was just wondering how that's affecting you this year. Sorry to sidetrack this whole conversation on that.
No, that's okay. I have not, I'm sure it is affecting it. I haven't heard discussions about how it is, in what ways it is. What I've heard previous to COVID was that anytime a district went to community eligibility, they saved so much money and manpower in administrative responsibilities. Like so many of those, just so much of the paperwork was off their plates, pun intended, that they were able to redirect some of those funds to local.
That's good.
Yeah.
Okay.
But COVID's a different situation. The supply chain just has shifted. It's worth talking to Allison Patrick. Her team up in Cleveland has done amazing things and has continued to substantially increase the percent of local foods even throughout COVID.
Oh, okay. That's good. We maybe need to have a breakout section on that at some point too.
Yeah. And that's the Feed Our Future model that ODE is picking up. So I'm encouraged that.
And Bryn, just to mention, Allison Patrick is with the Cuyahoga County Board of Health, so you can look her up pretty easily. Just wanted to mention the organization she's with.
Yep.
Thanks.
I just wanted to jump back to Tanisha's question earlier. We are, trying to get into schools as well. And this year we kind of piloted the Apple Crunch, the Great Lakes Apple Crunch program. So that was kind of our foray into farm to table or farm to school programming here. And it went over well. We did use funding from an agricultural education fund that we had access to. So we purchased the apples this year for the schools, and we may do it for maybe 2 or 3 years just to kind of, create a goodwill relationship. But obviously the intention there is to get them to pick up the purchase of the apples. So that's kind of our pilot, I guess you can say. And I was in a meeting with Allison Patrick. I think it was the farm to school meeting previously, and she was very helpful in explaining some. I'm not sure where you're located, but yeah, the Ohio Schools Council buying cooperative. She gave me information on that and how that works with schools and purchasing. So you might, depending on where you are, it may be helpful for you as well.
Nice. Yeah, we actually have in Union County, we have a very local orchard. And they do a lot with our farmers markets. They're very outgoing with education for the kids. When we're at the farmers market, they give them apples, let them taste them, give them ideas, give them recipes. And there's a school, in a food desert in one of our main priority communities that could really utilize something like that with literally same county, like township, local produce. So, it's just getting them to buy in. So that's because I think their free and reduced lunches up to almost 80%. So it's just a matter of, I know it affects funding. And so I just need to do a little more research, I think, and learn a little more on the benefits.
Carol just put in the chat that the next Ohio Farm to School Network meeting is December 9th, 9:30 to noon. Allison and ODE are both presenting, or speaking. That's a good opportunity if you're interested, and definitely not off topic because I think we fairly covered the institutions section of the policy agenda. So I'll, before our last question, which I want to get to, move to infrastructure. So This one's more at the state level, creating an interagency task force to identify existing food infrastructure development needs, creating a robust financial tool to support the development of local food supply chain infrastructure with state financing, and also supporting the expansion of processing of livestock, aquaculture, and specialty crops. Does anyone have experience in these areas or heard of how a local initiative might support something at the state level? And if not, that's okay. These are kind of larger systems.
Well, this isn't state level, but county level. It came along with the COVID-19 Small Business Response and Recovery Funds that came through last year. I think, Bryn, you mentioned COVID relief funds too, but there was quite a bit of assistance that went, they created like a task force. I think it was called like Quick Strike or something at the Board of Commissioners level. And it offered a lot of loan funds for small businesses, and many of those were food industry and small food businesses. So yeah, I think everyone saw, the COVID disruption in the food system, supply chain. And so those funds, granted they were temporary, encouraged us at the city and county, with the local, in conjunction with the local food action plan, to think through what some of those financing options can be beyond COVID relief funds. So the finance fund has kind of stepped in for that. And then also, any small businesses, but particularly those that were hard hit in the food industry, have been given a lot of support through that. So I'm hoping that's something that continues, because like I said, we saw a lot of disruption with COVID, and a lot of folks came together, pooled money together. And so hopefully that's something we continue to see. And then mobile meat processing, I think there was a breakout session about it earlier, but there's a study that's going on, Thea Carol, that's being headed by, I think Paul Durant is his name, and Angela Blatt of InFact and CDFA, but they did like a big needs assessment on mobile meat marketing with a focus in southern and southwestern Ohio, and heard a lot from farmers about where the bottleneck tends to happen. And so that's something that I think they're in discussions with at the state level about getting some of those HACCP plans cleared for mobile meat processing. Again, another thing we saw with COVID, with those meat processing plants shutting down, and then farmers having to, kill off or harvest their livestock on the fields. So those are my 2 nuggets there.
So I'll mention as well. So Ohio Food Policy Network in the past has done virtual convenings, and we sort of paused during COVID because everyone was zoomed out. So we're going to resume those in January, and the first 3 convenings are going to be based on infrastructure. So if you are like, I don't know anything about infrastructure on this call, it's okay. We'll be convening in the early months of next year. So our first one will be with somebody from the Department of Emergency Management, and they're going to talk about emergency food plans and sort of kind of what happened during COVID, sort of where the challenges were, and how there are places where we could make policy changes, and how local food councils can directly be involved with emergency food planning. So that will be the first one. The second one hopefully will be hosted by somebody on this call, Nicole Wright. I'm going to call her out. She'll be doing a little bit of a presentation on aquaculture and some of the policy challenges there. And then as Karima mentioned, the third one would be on the mobile meat processing project. So Angela and Paul and a few other people will be presenting on that. So the first quarter of next year, our virtual convenings will be focused solely on infrastructure. So you'll see those go out to the listserv, but that'll be a way to connect and learn more if you're not, I'm not an expert in infrastructure in any means. So I'll be looking forward to learning from them.
Thanks, Amanda. That's exciting. We have about 8 minutes left, so I want to make sure that we cover what supports would be helpful for you all to receive from OFPN, from the network itself, from the steering committee members. What comes to mind?
Also, Sarah, I'll add if there's something particular about virtual convenings that you'd like us to focus on, or a specific training that could be held in lieu of virtual convening, you can also add that to the list.
Well, I'll start by saying, like, I find these kinds of meetings, just making space for networking, extremely helpful. I think most food policy summits, that's always my favorite thing, and something we try to do more. I've already shot off like several emails to folks to have follow-up meetings after this, but like Bryn, I know you've been involved with the council in the past, but I'd love to hear more about what Licking County is doing, and then Tammy as well over in Knox. And so maybe like creating some intentional space. Like I know OFA sometimes does networking happy hours or social hours where folks can just be online and meet or share ideas. So maybe more than once a year would be nice. Maybe once a quarter or twice a year or something, but just creating some intentional space to network would be nice, because I think everyone, especially if you're volunteering for your council, it's hard to make time to do that, but so necessary in coordinating efforts for greater impact.
Yeah, I would love if it was something more than once a year, because I do feel like we all get excited and, feel a lot of this energy. And, like you were saying too earlier, a lot of it is seasonal. I think once we all, because no matter how we're all volunteering, like we all have different roles in the summer and during the growing and, food season or school season. And I think in the wintertime, there's some space that we all have, especially like January and February, where we're all kind of excited and planning for the year. It'd be great if we had a chance, an opportunity just to even have a visual, like an online social or happy hour.
Yeah, I think too, I don't know how you would accomplish this. Like I sent this notice on to the food council to let them know that this this meeting was happening, and encourage them to attend. And it would be nice to see, I think folks who either work for an institution or they have a paid position on the council can generally attend these, but I don't know if we could incentivize somehow getting all the folks that come to the meetings together to see it as part of like a broader, larger network kind of thing. It would be really fun to see other faces of just, folks on the group. So anyway.
Yeah, that's really good feedback. I manage the Creating Healthy Communities program at the Ohio Department of Health, and I know there's two coordinators representing local health departments on the call, and we do monthly calls, which sometimes are grant management, sometimes it's a training, but by and large, the feedback every time is we want to talk to each other, and those are the most robust calls we have, is when everyone's just networking and sharing successes and challenges around certain topics. Yeah, Kareem, I like that idea too. The idea of watching a film or screening and then having a discussion virtually after. I wrote that down on my list.
Julie, were you planning to do that screening in person in Ashtabula, or are you going to do virtual?
To be honest, I would like to have an in-person option so people could attend. I know there's virtual screening options too, so I'm not sure how that works, but definitely an in-person.
I also really appreciated being able to interface with our state representatives, especially those who are championing local food systems work. And so I know it's a big ask, but something that I think Jill has thrown around in the past, like legislative luncheons or opportunities to just have like a candidates forum or something where we can chat with local officials, because they obviously see us as a resource, and of course we do too, for pushing the work forward. But yeah, even again, like quarterly or something. I think he's retiring now, but Representative or is he Senator Tim Ryan? Sorry. He was really big on especially hunger and food security issues in Ohio. I think he's not seeking re-election, but nonetheless, folks like that who maybe are not as connected with networks like us, but could definitely benefit, just like a nice mutualistic relationship to have. But yeah, I loved the folks you had on today, Representative Brent. And yeah, so I think that would be nice if we could have them.
And I'll mention for Representative Brent today, it was not planned to be a Q&A, and it turned into one. And so that was super cool. So it was very organic. That's why no one was monitoring the chat box for her, because she just went for it. And so we kind of just let her do her thing. But it's pretty rare to get to interact with an elected official like that, where their questions are not given in advance. Like, it was very organic and super, super cool. So hope you all were on for that. But I do agree, Krim, it'd be nice to have more opportunities like that, but they are quite difficult to secure sometimes.
Or even a staffer. Like, it doesn't have to be the representative, but their staffers often go out and hear about, put their ear to the ground and hear about what's going on. But yes, like, would have loved to have some questions prepared in advance. So if we do something like that again, yeah, I'd come ready.
Yeah, I found both of those to be very inspiring sessions, especially since there's a tie to Ohio. In the past, we've had national speakers or professionals from other states, and while you always learn something from that, it was really, really nice to see that Ohio focus this year from our keynotes.
I think the steering committee could also maybe, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I think the steering committee members could also probably reach out to elected officials more often to say, how can we support your current work, or what bills are you drafting, or where do you need a voice? And we don't do that, but I wrote that on my scratch pad, things we could do, because I think we're still a newer network in some ways. Like, some people know the network exists, some people don't, and people often don't know how to use the network as a tool. And so I think we can be a little bit more proactive to kind of get information on where we can provide support and how.
I agree with that, Amanda. I sometimes don't know. So I'm having a hard time sometimes staying in my lane, because my professional world and my personal world kind of all flow along the same vein. But I'm a 5th generation farmer, and like working with creating healthy communities and food service and community outreach, and it's really hard for me to stay in my lane sometimes when I want to go to the farming side and just like throw all the stuff that we're doing and then go back. And today's been amazing. So I just, yeah, everything that you said, Amanda, I agree with. Sorry, I just got a little passionate there for a minute. I don't even know where my brain was going. I was just so excited about all the stuff I've learned today.
All right, I think we're officially
consider applying for the steering committee. We have dual perspectives, but yeah, we are at time, and we have about a 15-minute break until our closing session at 2, or our last session before the closing, but that starts at 2 o'clock, and you can access that back on the main summit page. Thanks for your participation. I'm glad that we all got to talk, and I didn't have to talk much of the time. Yeah, thanks again. We'll see you soon.